and we go to the next page. Today we are to present to you this webinar. We have 3 persons. So myself, I'm Chin Yang. I'm General Manager for Southeast Asia. I look after Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam. I'm also the COMEX leader for our APAC region. And to help us present on raw material, we have Mr. Pablo Huang, Sourcing and Supply Chain Director for APAC. He's based in Shanghai. We also have Ms. Ling Ling Chan, our Supply Chain Manager of Southeast Asia, and she's based in Singapore. Yeah. So next page, Janet. Just to remind you, throughout this webinar, you can actually go to the bottom of your screen. There is a chat button for you to click and to submit any question along any point of the webinar. So feel free to provide any question or clarification that you need from us, and we will try and answer them towards the end of the presentation. And for today, for the content of our webinar, we'll be talking mostly about steel and resin. Steel, as you know, is a main product that we supply to our customers. And Greif is the largest steel drum manufacturers in the world. And steel material is of utmost concern for many of our customers. And also we produce large plastic drums, jerry cans, and IBC, which uses HDPE resin. And this raw material is also of a concern to many of our customers. So we'll be covering this too. We will talk about a bit of a market overview, the current situation. We try to also share with you how do we see the rest of 2021. And one important subject that has cropped up over the last couple of months is also about being carbon neutral. As we know, China is going towards a carbon neutral, and this one is affecting our steel raw material supply. So this part will be covered as well. To start us off, I just want to talk about a few headlines around the world to set the situation. As we can see, right, metal prices, whether it's steel, copper, or other metal material, are playing catch up because after the pandemic or as the world economy recover, the demand actually recovers, but the supply has been lagging, so it's continued to play catch up. That causes a little bit of a supply and demand imbalance. And of late, they also concerned about the rebate of China, where they have been providing a rebate for export of steel from a steel mill in China. So this is also causing a concern, influencing us. And I'm sure all of us will be aware about the Suez Canal blockage, and which has been cleared. But that still continue to heighten the pressure on steel, especially it will hinder the flow of trade in the next couple of months between East and West, between Asia and Europe, where there's a lot of trade also in the raw material. And iron ore being one of the ingredient of steel making, of late there's also been uptick in terms of prices, and also is feeding off each other in terms of steel. So these are some of the headlines around the world, not just affecting Asia Pacific, but also affecting North America as well as Europe. Yeah. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our presenter for steel. So Pablo will share with us on the steel market. So over to you, Pablo.
Thank you, Chin Yang. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Pablo Huang from Shanghai, China. So I will share with you some information related to the steel and the steel market. So in this slide, what I will share with you is that the two ways of steel producing, blast furnace and electric furnace. So blast furnace uses iron ore, coal, and some steel scrap, but the volume is not very big. Electric furnace mainly uses steel scrap. The integrated mills in the world, including in Far East, including China, Korea, Japan, and India, are blast furnace productions. But the steel mills in Europe and in USA, these advanced countries, they are more electric furnace because they are more the steel scrap that's supplied. Although global iron ore production concentrated in Brazil, Australia, China, and India, but the iron ore quality in Brazil and Australia is much more better than in China and India. The ferric content of the iron oil in Brazil and Australia is at least over 50%, but in China, it's only around 30%. Also, the iron oil in Brazil and Australia is much more easy to get. So their cost is much more cheaper than China and India. For the lead time from iron oil to the finished steels, just like the colloid steel graph used, around 6 months. And we order the steels from the mills to ship to the graph plants at least 2 months in China and 3 months for Southeast Asia. So in these slides, show that the globally around 1.8 billion steel consumptions. Building and the infrastructure consumed half of the total volume. Mechanical equipment and automotive used 28% of the total volume. But for our steel drum industry, it's only represent 0.5%. And also for steel used for drum is also not the high value steels compared with other industry. So that means that when there's a market is tight supply, very few the steel mills will keep drum customers as a priority. So for Greif, long-term relationship with the steel mills and the global channel to manage the steel supply can make Greif have a much better positions compared with our competitors. Next slide. In this slide, we will show you that this global 1.8 billion steel production, the top 10 mills in the world represent 28% of a global output. 6 mills from China, 1 from Europe, 1 from Japan, 1 from Korea, and 1 from India. But the India mill, the Tata Steel, actually is not the pure India mill. They also have some productions in Europe as well. Greif has business with 8 of these top 10 steel mills globally. Next slide. Let us review what happened for the steel market in the past 2020 during the pandemic period globally. The overall, the colloid steel performed as a shape of V in the whole year. In Asia, the steel price started to drop from end of February due to the COVID-19 and start to rebound from end of May, then sharply going up in the fourth quarter of last year. In the rest of the world, the colloid price rebounded from later Q3. Let us break down as the raw material cost, supply, and the demand situation to know why the market performed as a V. From the raw material cost, iron oil price increased from 65 to 170 in 2020. And the steel scrap price also hit the high record in the past several years. It was very difficult to collect the steel scrap due to the COVID-19. Coal price also stood at very high positions due to tight supply caused by the very strictly environment protection policies in China. From the supply, what we can see is that around 5% capacity reductions in 2020, exclude China. In Europe and the USA, around 50 and 40 capacity idled in 2020. And in China, the capacity in 2020 is very close to 2019. Due to the first half year, the capacity reductions in China, so the second half year, actually China capacity utilization was very high. From the demand, the overall demand in 2020 reduced 2.4% globally. But the strong recovery from Q2 in China and the demand improved in Western countries in Q4 made the steel supply a very tight situation. As China can control the COVID-19 quite well, the domestic demand for automotive and machinery was very strong. Also, the export of the products which made by steel very strong as well. Next slide. Let's move forward to the current steel market situation. So here we divide as China and Southeast Asia to share with you. In China, from the supply side, the cold roll capacity utilization was 80 to 85%, with quite high levels due to the strong demand. So normally in China, the cold roll capacity utilization is around 75 to 80%. And the margin level for this Chinese mill is quite well. The cold roll steel price after Chinese New Year also increased around 50 US dollars per metric tons, with the demand improved. In some specific industries, the steel demand is really very strong, such as the container making. So the container makers with the full capacity will last to June 2021. Home appliance export is also very good. Refrigerators export almost double from November 2020 due to the quarantine and the work from home policies in many countries. The people needed to buy the new refrigerators to store the foods. Currently, China domestic price is still slightly higher than the export price. So for the Chinese mill, so they have no intentions to export more volumes to other regions. In Southeast Asian market, so the supply remains very tight. The volume from China is not big. Also for these Far East steel mills, exclude the Chinese mills, for example, from Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and some rollers in Southeast Asia as well. Actually, they allocate some volumes to other regions, such as Europe. Due to the material shortages in Europe, so the buyers from Europe can pay higher prices than Southeast Asia buyers. Also, some mills oversell their Q1 shipment volumes, so they needed to reduce the allocation recently to make more balance of the orders versus the output. With this situation, what we see in the price continued going up from January, as the price levels in Southeast Asian market also stand at very high positions. Some rollers in Southeast Asia who buy the hollow steel to produce the cold roll. So they request the customers to pay the deposit for orders to avoid the risks of a customer that cancel the orders. Another situation for imported steels, the lead time is getting longer due to less bulk cargoes. And the high sea freight for barcodes also the increase around 50% in Far East region. Based on the current steel market situation, let us outlook what the steel market will move in the next 3 quarters of 2021. So steel supply from Asian mills will remain tight supplied in the first half of 2021, as the Europe and the USA mills still do not 100% come back. They are still buying some volumes from Asia. China, as a global steel price direction leaders, China will adjust the export tax refund from April. And it is very clear that the steel export refund will be reduced. That means that the export price from China will increase. So in the first half of 2021, we forecast the steel price will continue going up. Also, the lead time for Southeast Asia regions is a big concern as well. So as Greif customers, how you and us work more closely to manage the job forecast better is a key factor to make the jump supply smoothly. For the cold rolled steel price of the second half of 2021, it is still not very clearly and quite complicated to forecast. But what we can say, there will be not very big price increment because many end users cannot take the very high steel cost and pass to their customers. On the other hand, we also do not expect the steel price with a big drop because the high oil cost is still very high and some impact of the carbon neutral target in China. So this carbon neutral target will also increase the steel production cost. So I will introduce the topic of carbon neutral in China's steel industry, which will impact to us in the next 30 years. What is the carbon neutral? So it is a balance of carbon emission and the carbon capture. Steel production with the big volumes of carbon emissions. And as a China carbon emission target, steel mills needed to capture their carbons as well. Next slide. In the world, there are only 2 countries can reach the carbon neutral now. One is in Asia, Bhutan. The other one is in Latin America, the Suriname. Both of them are not the developed countries. So far, there are 11 countries worldwide that set the carbon neutral target by law. For China, the government announced to reach the carbon peak before 2030 and achieve the carbon neutral before the 2060. Next slide. Let us review the China carbon emission situation. China is the largest carbon emission country in the world with 9.8 billion tons, around 29% of the global carbon emission. Let us break down the carbon emission by sections. Electric power with the burn coil and the manufacturing industries represent 83% of the total volumes. For steel industry, it represented 18%. So simply speaking, steel industry also under the pressure for carbon neutral. Next slide. So how Chinese steel mills will do to achieve the carbon neutral? For the short term, reduce output and control the capacity to increase is the main actions. Chinese government will also now allow the more steel capacity to be built. For long term, reduce capacity, not only output. And the CCUS, carbon capture usage and the storage, and the new equipment also promote more electric furnace instead of the blast furnace other directions. For all of these actions, CCUS is the most important one. Next slide. What is the real impact to steel industry based on the carbon neutral target in China? To control the capacity, there will be more steel M&A that happened in the next couple of years. As we already know that Bao Steel merged the Wuhan Steel and Ma Steel, and An Steel merged the Panzihua Steel in West